Next up is Catwoman in The Replacements. Catwoman is pregnant in this volume, and there is a little helper pretending to be Catwoman in her absence because, you know, she can't action, she's heavily pregnant. So I kind of really like both Catwoman and her replacement. The replacement is quite obviously a learner and gets it wrong sometimes, but she has the same kind of cheek, and um, there's just like a funny self awareness. Like she is chatting to herself through jobs, and you know she's kind of got her own like typical kind of noir esque comic narration going on in her head, like in a monologue going on as she's going through jobs and like, oh, I can handle this and blah blah blah, and then something changes and like, oh shit, what do I do now? It's a really interesting situation. Next up is Maya or Maya from Debris. I haven't heard anybody talk about this comic, and I think that's really sad. It's by Curtis Weeb, who wrote Rat Queens, and weirdly enough, her aesthetic kind of reminds me a little bit of Violet from Rat Queens, the Viking-esque dwarf girl. Um, Debris is about this like toxic wasteland with mechanical like sandworm type creatures. It's got some nice mythology behind it, and Maya is like just super awesome fighter missionary kind of girl, and yeah, she's just really hardcore and ace. Next is Rocket Girl. She has a name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm gonna go with Daeyoung Dayon Johansson. She's a 15-year-old girl, and she's a cop from the future, and she has time traveled to save the world, and she gets stuck, I think. And she, you know, she gets into trouble. She gets a bit stuck. This is a little bit like in that sense, it's a little bit like Catwoman and The Replacements, because The Replacement is kind of a little bit out of her depth. I really like reading about girls out of their depth because I think that's an inevitable part of life and it's important to acknowledge. It's an important, like, awkward stage of development which is helpful to read about, to relate to. It's enjoyable, it's really interesting, you know, put your characters to the test, why not? And there has been a push of misguided feminism at times to only represent strong, confident women doing nothing wrong, and, you know, women being not fucking up and surprising men by not fucking up. And I'm like, no, everybody fucks up and you should acknowledge that. And this is really gorgeous. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to reading more because the story didn't get to a point where it didn't like end, it didn't round off. So I'm looking forward to like continuing. I feel like I'm kind of hanging on at the moment. And Amy Reeder was at Thought Bubble Festival as well, and I got to hear her speak, and she had a blanket with this cover picture on, and possibly will make more blankets. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So, you know, what more do you need than comics and blankets? My next choice is probably a little bit controversial because there's a little bit of fan service in this book. However, it wasn't enough to put me off, and I am quite offended by fan service. I do read Sherlock Bones, which is disgusting for fan service, and I have enjoyed Yuki Yuna, the series, anime series, which is also a bit off-putting sometimes, but I pushed through those and I really enjoyed them, and this was kind of the same. This was a little bit more, it's insidious, but it's there, but it's quiet. Um, so Rory is our protagonist in this. She is in Japan, she's reunited with her mum, and she is battling some supernatural things, demon type things, and it's just really cool and kind of creepy. And if you like supernatural like monsters, I much prefer that in the way of horror because I hate things about people being nasty to people because it's too real for me. I do quite like supernatural monsters because there's something just less gross about that, and I enjoy it a lot more. It's a bit more escapist. So if you like supernatural horror, this might be for you. I will put out a trigger warning for it because it does involve self-harm. I would recommend this if you're interested in like punky, alternative young girls kicking ass because that's what's going on.